if you work full-time, you should be able to pay the rent and pay for food and not live in poverty.
Well, Governor Cuomo delivered his very long State of the State address this afternoon, and he pushed for, among other things, a higher minimum wage and a property tax credit. Governor, he wants the minimum wage increased to $11.50 in the city and $10.50 across the rest of the state. He also unveiled a $142 billion state budget proposal and said that a $5 billion windfall from financial settlements ought to help pay for the Tappan Zee Bridge replacement and airport and transit upgrades in the city.
So by controlling the spending at 2%, we can continue to keep taxes down. If we continue to keep taxes down, we keep businesses coming our way. And that's exactly what our goal for this year should be, starting with small businesses. Small businesses are 98% of all the businesses in New York. Small businesses are where the jobs are being created. That is the lifeblood. Anything we can do to generate small business is what we want to do. We want to have a tax cut for small business that is dramatic.
All right, I want to head out to Albany right now. I got political journalist and author Dominic Carter. He was there, and Dominic, oy vey, an hour and a half, huh? That was a long, long address.
Well, Richard, the governor had told us, and I guess he was joking, he told us the bad news today was that he expected his State of the State and budget address combined into one today to go for some 3 hours. So, in fact, he cut that time in half to about an hour and a half, an hour 45. Before we talk about reaction to the State of the State address, let's talk about one of the central players in all of this, Richard, and that is the mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio. Mayor de Blasio here in Albany, as is tradition for mayors throughout the state, met with the press. But before he actually talked to reporters, he talked on the side to us exclusively for a couple of minutes before his press conference. And in the private conversation that RNN had with the mayor, I asked the mayor, I said, man, you know, you just got back from Paris. Of course, the solidarity trip he made following the terrorist attack there, basically what amounted to a 36-hour trip. And I said privately, you know, Mr. Mayor, you just got back from this trip. You have to be exhausted. He said he was, Richard. And so when he then went before the cameras and the podium, I decided to ask the mayor the same question, and I did not expect for him to be honest, but in fact he was, and here's what de Blasio had to say.
Nick, thank you for asking. Merci beaucoup. Yeah, I'm a little tired, but it was, I do want to say it was a very moving visit to Paris on so many levels. Obviously, you know, one thing people understood immediately is that we in New York City have experienced terror in a way that no other city has because of 9/11. And I felt there was a real sense of appreciation that people understood that New York City was reaching out to Paris, offering support and solidarity. We obviously want to help them very practically in sharing some of our expertise in terms of security. But there was also, for me, what happened in Paris is an example of a larger struggle around the world to protect freedom of expression, to protect the freedom to worship as you choose, a whole host of values we hold dear. And I have to say, particularly in my visits with Jewish community leaders, to hear the fear that people in the Jewish community in Paris feel right now was really troubling. And one of the things I said to them is, we in New York City, we're not perfect, but one of the things we learned long ago is to protect communities that might be embattled and to provide extra support, extra security, extra support in their hour of need.
Okay, Richard, State of the State now address. Governor Cuomo, you mentioned some of the highlights just a second ago. The governor called this Opportunity Agenda for 2015. And quoting Governor Cuomo, too many people believe if you're born poor, you'll die poor. Now, a number of controversial initiatives announced by the governor. Of course, he wants to raise the minimum wage that you talked about. But among the ones that will be raising a lot of controversy, Richard, are his education initiatives. He wants to pursue major reforms in terms of evaluations for teachers and an expansion of charter schools. Now, that is not going to sit too well with the United Federation of Teachers. All right, Mr. President, I would imagine as the president of the UFT, you're not a happy camper tonight.
No, I'm more sad because these are so many of the ideas I've heard here today. Look, there were some things I liked, but most of the really tough ideas I heard were things that we've heard for years that have been tried across the country, and people are now moving away from them because they're based on political ideologies, and they have proven to be fail, and they've actually been harmful to education. And yet here I am in my state, and everyone's moving away from it, and I hear our governor moving towards some of those bad ideas.
What are some of the problems that you have with what the governor proposed?
Look, I want the moving up the idea of using test scores more and more in education. We believe in annual testing. We want to know how children are doing. We want to know what their strengths and weaknesses are. This is an important tool for teachers, but to move it up to a teacher's job performance is based on 50% of a student's performance on a test score. It's not fair to the student, it's not fair to the teacher, and in the end, it really takes education and moves it into a test prep system, not an education system. And we've seen this already, and now that we're moving away from this type of education in New York City, now I hear that the state and the governor, the governor seems to be proposing he wants to do.
UFT, my final question, very powerful. What are you going to do now? Are we going to see advertising campaigns on television against the governor like we've seen in the past from the UFT?
What I will do is I will speak to my members. I will go to my delegate assembly. I'll speak to the state union, and we'll take it from there. But we're going to have to be aggressive here, because there's one thing to say there's a policy or a difference of opinion on an educational idea if there's real research behind it. But when there's educational proposals that research says is bad and we know is going to hurt education, therefore hurt children, then it might be a big fight.
Well, Mr. County Exec, you're here in Albany. You wanted Mr. Cuomo's job. Who knows what's going to happen down the road? Your take on this state of the state address?
Well, I think there were some good things in there. I like what I heard with regard to the airport revitalization. We need that. Education reform, I think, is very, very important. I would have liked to have heard about Common Core and getting rid of it. However, there were some good things in there. The bad thing is we really didn't address how to deal with ever-escalating taxes, property taxes. To say we're going to take from some and give to others and not address the real problem, which are expenses, period. Expenses keep going up. You saw more and more money being proposed to be spent here. How's that going to be paid for? It comes from taxes. And just to cover up and mask with a credit does nothing to keep taxes from going up. In fact, it's going to guarantee taxes go up.
He did talk about the Tappan Zee Bridge.
Yeah. No, I'm glad he did. It's a project I very much support. But I would have liked to have seen him dedicate more money to infrastructure. Our roads and bridges are absolutely falling apart. He's proposing, I guess, $1.3 billion on the Thruway Authority. How much of that's going to go directly to Tappan Zee, I don't know. But even so, that's probably less than we need to keep tolls from going up. All he said was tolls won't go up for a year, and then it's going to go up pretty high, I imagine.
And so, Richard, a heavy lift in terms of some of these initiatives from Governor Cuomo as it relates to him working it out with the legislature. And I mentioned the UFT, and the reason being, some of us still remember when Governor George Pataki faced some ads from local healthcare union 1199, and his popularity dropped dramatically. So it'll be very interesting for Mr. Cuomo going ahead. Finally, he did propose some things that everyone will get on board with. Better bulletproof vests for police officers, the patrol car windows that are bulletproof. The governor wants to do all of that, but here's something that's very controversial, Richard. The governor, that is Governor Cuomo, wants an independent monitor in cases that involve the police and the public where there is no indictment, fatal cases, in which the monitor will review the case and can possibly recommend a special prosecutor. Here's what one top Republican had to say as it relates to that.
Policing Special prosecutor, I don't think is a go. I think that's not going to happen. You can't find a guy not guilty and then start all over again and do it all over again. I just
What
don't
about
think
the independent monitor?
I don't think that works. I don't think
That doesn't work either.
No, I don't think it's going to fly in our house. So I think that's going to have issues. But if you take a look at the overall spending, the overall focus for jobs, it's about jobs, jobs, jobs. We got to put people back to work.
Richard, one police union official, Michael Palladino, sent me a statement tonight in which he basically said that he welcomes the governor's announcement as it relates to police equipment, but I am quoting Palladino now. He says he's not willing to horse trade, to disrupt the due process rights of police officers. So it'll be very interesting days ahead, Richard, from here in Albany. That is it for now. Let's go back to you in the studio.
All right, Dominic, thank you very much. A lot of interesting stuff. We're going to jump to break. We come back. We're going to bring the table in to see what they thought about what the governor said, what's got a chance of getting through, and what doesn't. Stay with us. We'll be right back.